I think that we are by nature, we have to be a listening people, because if we were spoken into being by the word of God, then there's a sense in which the curve of our beings is to be listeners and to need to attend to the word that spoke us into life.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Sarah Clarkson is a writer whose work centers on beauty and grief, story and quiet. She has written of herself, "I'm trying to write well about my own sorrow and my own encounters with the beauty that defied my darkness and drew me into a life of creativity, quiet, and wonder." She studied theology at Oxford University. Sarah is the author or co-author of 6 books, most recently Reclaiming Quiet, which she wrote to answer her own questions about what it means to have a quiet mind in a fallen, screen-driven world. In this episode, Sarah Clarkson and I discuss a better definition of quiet, the importance of physical presence, the dangers of screens, and the value of boredom. Sarah Clarkson, I'm so happy to have you on the Habit Podcast to talk about your new book, Reclaiming Quiet, Cultivating a Life of Holy Attention. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted.
What is the 90-second summary of what your new book is about?
Oh gosh, I'm really bad at these, so I'll start by saying that. Okay. Basically, it was so about 4 years ago, middle of the pandemic, I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and we got to the end of the first pandemic year. We were in another extreme lockdown, and I woke up one day and was really trying to come to a place of having a good prayer time, or kind of just coming to a center. And I realized I had silence around me, but I had come to a place where I had almost no capacity to have interior quiet. My mind was so busy. I had gotten so used to kind of panic scrolling my phone, turning to that as a source of kind of consolation amidst the real isolation of that time, that I just could come to a place where my mind was unquiet. And I began to really think through that and wrestle with it. And it basically turned into 4 years and this book. So what I ended up doing was, I thought I'd start this book, and I read Psalm 23. It's like, this is what's going to happen. God's going to lead me by quiet streams of quiet water. I'm going to learn how to be quiet and find out the disciplines and teach everyone else. And then we had 3 of the least quiet years of our lives: 2 births, 2 deaths, 3 moves, appendicitis, and pneumonia between us. And I figured out that it wasn't going to be an attainment of discipline. But the longer I went, the more I realized it was, the more I studied it, prayed, thought about it, I realized my definition of quiet was inadequate. Quiet is not something I do, it's something I come home to. It is the space that awaits me. It is the place I come to encounter the one who made me. And when I realized that, it changed the way I began to pursue quiet, and really the book kind of wrote itself after that.
Okay, so yes, I typically think of quiet. I think we typically think of quiet as a subtraction. You take away distractions. Let's start there. Quiet as a matter of we define it in negative terms. Yeah. And you have a whole section called the shape of quiet. You can't define a thing negatively if you're giving it a shape. So tell me about that. Let's talk about the idea of quiet, not necessarily as a subtraction, or not necessarily as the absence of something, but rather something in itself.
Yeah. I just realized that I have, 4 young children. They're 6 and under, and long spaces of silence, let alone, solitude of any kind, are just rare in my life. Yeah. And so I began to think about, the kind of attention and wonder and the kind of more concentrated or fixed prayer I was desiring. I thought, is this just for specialists? Is this just for, the religious, the introvert, the single person, the whatever it is this a specialist topic? And I began to realize that I think in our culture, especially, we think of quiet so much as things to take away, subtracting people, subtracting noise, subtracting distraction. And we also, I think because of that, we think about it in a very abstract way. It's kind of like this void mental state that we enter, which I also think is very uninteresting. I think we kind of just think of it as this high level of discipline. And so when I began to think about it, I realized, if you look at in scripture, there's a lot of talk about waiting and stillness and quiet, but it's always couched in terms of whether it's, being led beside quiet waters, being rooted in the presence of God, standing like a watchman and waiting. That's a kind of quiet. And I began to realize that quiet, we're embodied people. We can't be quiet with our minds alone. Our bodies have to be involved. And so it's not just even making time for quiet. I began to realize that the habits I'd had of scrolling my phone, of getting up in the morning and not looking outdoors, not rooting myself in the natural world, turning immediately to a screen, those had actually abstracted me from the physical world around me. Whereas I think quiet is often something that comes when we are rooted in attention to the present, where we are, our breath is calmer, we have the capacity to attend, to sit still, to listen. And so I began to realize I could cultivate physical patterns of quiet. I could teach myself to be rooted in attention. I could put my electronics away. I could, create a ritual of kind of rooting my senses each morning. I could step outdoors. That there was very specific ways I could create the shape of a life, kind of the shape of quiet in a sense. It wasn't an abstract thing. It was something that was embodied and chosen and pursued in that sense.
Yeah. And what is the relationship between introversion and extroversion on the one hand, and quiet on the other? Are introverts better at being quiet than extroverts?
Introverts may be better at being alone than extroverts, but I think quiet is the quality of attention we have in the center of our hearts. So I think you can be extroverted or introverted. Different people will do different amounts of solitude or different, lengths of time. But quiet is something that you can't imagine without quiet. I don't think you can truly relate well without quiet, even if you're a highly relational person, because you have to be able to truly see someone else. You can't be so caught up in the frenzy of your own thoughts and opinions. You have to be able to sit in a stillness that is a kind of attention to look at another person with real insight and depth. And so I think quiet is something, it's the birthright of us all. We do it in different ways. We have different lengths of solitude or silence we're capable of, but it is the native ground of each human being, I think.
Okay. So just in practical terms, in a busy, loud life, you have some experience. Maybe you just answered this question, but if so, answer it again. How do you cultivate quiet in a loud and busy, an unavoidably loud and busy situation? I
think, first of all, you identify what you mean by quiet. So is quiet a discipline is this a huge feat I'm trying to attain? Or is this a place I'm coming every day to root myself in love? So that's the first thing. How do you define it? Because I think if you think of it as a feat, most days you're not going to have enough energy for it. The way I think about it, so I have 5 minutes in the morning, literally 5 minutes, between we get the children dressed and it's my turn to get dressed and everything. And then I usually have 5 to 10 minutes for a quote unquote quiet time. And, in those 5 minutes, what I'm trying to do is become as still as I can, become aware of the goodness of God around me at all times. It's the coming home to this goodness that's already there. I really believe quiet is about coming into the presence of the one who loves us. And so if you think of it in those terms, then even 5 minutes, even 2 minutes becomes a homecoming, becomes a secret meeting with the person who loves you, becomes, I'm sitting, in the car waiting for someone. Oh, I have these 2 minutes. I can be quiet. I can attend to what the Lord might want to say. I can look out the window and see creation. Even things I would say that, perhaps controversially, that listening to music, reading a book, these are actually activities within the realm of quiet because they're bringing us to a centered place of listening and attention. But in that sense, I think it's creating rhythms throughout the day where you can do it. So I only have 5 minutes, but I have 5 minutes in the morning and the evening. I can root myself in those 2 times. So identify the times you have. Figure out what you need to help yourself walk towards quiet. It's hard to come off the furor of the world into a place of stillness. So if I need to walk by words, so I often read something to help me come to a place of stillness, and usually I can arrive. The one thing I think you can't do, and I do write about this a lot in the book, is I don't think iPhones are usually, the way that we get to quiet. So I think you can usually sit down for a moment of quiet and look at your phone. That's not going to take you anywhere quiet. And I think that's one thing I had to really confront in my own journey to quiet was this is something that is stealing every moment of quiet I have because it's become the default activity I do when I have a moment alone. I think it's rooting it, creating cadences, finding out the shapes that you need, engaging your senses. So I have a candle, an icon. I sit by my window to look out. I think there's so many practical things that you can do like that to create a life that is more rooted in cadences and shapes
Yeah.
of quiet.
Yeah. I love the idea in your book that the goodness, the light, the beauty is there.
Yep.
And quiet as a way to connect us to that.
Yeah, I think it's just the space we step into to behold those things and to really receive them in their fullness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You speak of basking in the given and kindly light.
Yeah.
And then you say another sentence I like a lot is that resting in the brightness. This isn't a sentence; it's a phrase. Resting in the brightness, whose presence within our hearts remakes the world. And that confidence that the presence is there.
Yeah.
It can get layered over with a whole lot of things that distract our attention. Yeah.
And this is where I think reading some of the, those who have wrestled well with quiet, and I mentioned some of them in my book, Saint Teresa of Avila, she describes all those layered things that distract us. She called them reptiles. You're trying to travel to the interior castle of your soul where the beloved meets, and there's all these reptiles that are trying to bite your feet as you go. But I really thought a lot too about Brother Lawrence, Practice of the Presence of God, where he says he doesn't ask much of us, only a thought now and then, only an impulse of the heart. He is closer than we think. And that's what I think is really at the heart of this book is really, I think what we're losing by being distracted and busy and on our phones all the time, this includes me because I very much struggle with it, is the moment by moment knowledge of God's goodness. We are held, we are loved. And this is what I think we return to when we come to a place of listening and attention. And suddenly the world becomes full of meaning. And suddenly we notice how bountiful the world is, how mercy attends us at every moment. But I think we often miss it if we haven't learned to cultivate this watchfulness that is at the heart of quiet.
Yeah. I love the image. The image you start with is hunting for a kingfisher.
Yes.
And I love what your friend Mark said. He says, you have to be in a certain state of heart. Then you just see them, the kingfishers. And it's not like I'm manifesting kingfishers, right?
No.
Kingfishers appear in response to my getting in the right frame of heart.
Yeah.
The kingfishers are there already.
Exactly.
Yeah. I jumped right into the kingfisher thing. Maybe you should explain more about what Mark is talking about.
Well, I think you did a pretty good job. I mean, that's about the crux of it. They're there. They are, but they're swift and they're somewhat hidden if you're not watching. And you have to be in a place of watchfulness. And then you see them. But that's the way I think it is often with the mercy of God. It's all around us. It's not really hidden, but you have to be watching.
Yeah. I have a photographer friend who goes to we have a little lake, 2 or 3 miles from here, Radnor Lake. And it's nice. I like going there and I see deer and I see turkeys. But he sees minks and otters. And I mean, if he takes these pictures, I think, what? This is my neighborhood. I didn't know we had minks and otters. I mean, I know, I see an otter every now and then, but he sees things that I don't know how he does it. And I think it's something about what you're talking about.
Kingfisher side.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So you're a writer. You do a lot of writing. You mentioned that your writing, came to be driven by, I'm quoting now, a need to produce work that was rooted not in conviction or joy, but in the restless competition stoked by the online world. Now, I will say this: the restless and relentless competition, it does motivate people to be to produce.
It absolutely does. I think, and sometimes that pressure can be a good thing. I don't think I've turned in a single essay before the absolute midnight deadline when I was doing my degree. So I need the pressure to produce things. But I think that when we make that the default place we look to drive our writing rhythms, to drive our creativity, the internet is endless. There are going to be 10 gazillion articles published every day. There are going to be a gazillion books published. There is this sense of encountering, I have my spiritual director here, a lovely priest. He says, people don't usually do very well when they come up against infinity. Like, if you come up against space, you're probably going to die without protective gear. If you come across the ocean, you're probably going to die. The internet is kind of infinite, and there's a sense in
Wow.
which finite embodied people, we can't front that with health. We can't allow ourselves to be formed, not only in body, but certainly even worse in thought by this endless pattern, this endless activity. And in that sense, I think, if you can create a small circle of friends who's, of really high quality writers and people that it's a healthy kind of holy competition, and that's great. If you can create, you're taking this small circle. It's the larger, I'm going to scroll Instagram and I see 10 posts on this thing, and then I'm going to go look at Facebook, and then let me check it on Twitter, and then, oh, I haven't even checked my email yet. And by the time we even get to sitting down to write, we've seen so many things and taken in so much information that can we even listen to the voice of the original idea or the quiet place where I think there is that deep kind of place that you come to of listening that is a kind of where you're kind of receiving what is to be created and you're also creating at the same time. It's a kind of collaboration. And I think collaborative aspect with the Holy Spirit that I think we risk losing when we're too driven in our work by this restless online world where, oh, so-and-so said that, I need to have a hot take on this. Oh, so-and-so published this article, I need to have something to say. I need to get more newsletters out or else I won't have enough readers. I need to post more things. And, I've just come off a book launch. It's dreadful. You have to do it in a way. You have to do some level of posting in order to have attention so that Amazon will sell your book. The whole system is a little bit ridiculous if you ask me. But but I don't think it gives for great, deep creative writing as a model or as the main model by which we work.
Yeah. You're going to have to help me out here. We're going to articulate this idea together. How about that?
Okay.
You're talking about a cycle. So there's the cycle of the internet that convinces you got to produce. You're going to that language of hot take is so tempting. Thankfully, I'm always too slow to feel like my take could be hot anyway. So at least I'm a little bit insulated from that, or actually quite a bit insulated from that. But still, there's this sense, that's one cycle. But the cycle you're proposing is being open to reality, receiving what you can receive, giving voice to it, which and also coming to grips with your own finitude.
Yeah, limit. There is a limited number of issues I can care about, kinds of writing I can do, outrages I can bear, sorrows I confront, activities I can manage. There's a limited number, and every one of those, I don't know who I'm quoting here to be honest, but probably numerous people, every yes is a no to something else. So what is it that I'm called to? And if I'm called to this kind of writing or this kind of music or this kind of art, what will feed and create that rather than dissipating my creative focus and energy on these 10 gazillion different things? Because I think that's one of the things too, is we can see so many headlines and so many causes and so many great things we could do that there does come a paralysis of which thing ought I to do? What's the best thing to do? Whereas I think often if we step back and listen, we often know what we're called to if we come to that place of quiet, which is very different than, the next thing I could do. Yes, but what am I called to do?
Can you say one or two more sentences about that? About how one is conscious of what one is called to? How quiet clarifies a calling?
In that sense, again, I really believe that quiet for the extrovert, for the introvert, for the artist, for the creative person, for whatever realm you're in, is the place where you come into the presence of the one who made you and who formed you for good works and a great story in this world. And, I say in the book, I think that we are by nature, we have to be a listening people, because if we were spoken into being by the word of God, then there's a sense in which the curve of our beings is to be listeners and to need to attend to the word that spoke us into life. And in that sense, I think there is a real sense in which we are each intimately and specifically created, not for general good works, but quite often a particular good work, I think most people have several things that they, by the time you get to, it may take them, it's taken me I'm 40, it's taken me that long to figure out some of my strengths, but you come to a point where after much trial and error, and along the way, but I look back and I realize it is in the times of loneliness for me. It's often been in times of wilderness, in times of seeking, that I have kind of come to places of realizing this is where it's the Buechner quote. This is where my great joy meets the world's great sorrow. Or I
Yeah.
can't, I'm
No, but
paraphrasing
the
exactly.
world's great
In your
need and
vocation,
my great joy and the world's great need
yeah, and that's where vocation
intersect.
kind of lies.
Yeah.
Um, and I often think it's when we have the chance to listen, to attend both to what's inside of us, to our interior worlds, and interior worlds aren't just for introverts, um, as well as to who God has made us to be, how He shaped us, and how He has told the story of our lives, and how those things come together. And so I think most people, if they have the time to sit and listen, and if they take a regular, discipline or practice of listening before creating, I think a lot of people can find this is the shape of what I was called to. I wasn't called to these
Mhm.
50 things. I was called to these
Yeah.
2 or 3 things. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. It does. Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I'm thinking about the idea that, you know, I don't know if it originated with Aquinas, but Aquinas articulated it. The idea that, what I love is a clue to who I am.
yes, I like that.
And the internet has always, given me 1,000 ideas of something I should love and care about.
Exactly.
And and to say that, I mean, I do care about. I mean, and there are things that I wouldn't have known to care about that I do care about because, of the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah.
That's still not the same thing as saying it's my calling to
Like,
to
yeah.
talk about that.
No, the internet is a resource. The internet is a good thing. It's a connection. It's where so many of us could have connected with creative communities.
Yeah.
But it
Mm-hmm.
can't be the arbiter of how we write and create um, and form our sense of vocation and self in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that idea of in quiet, as I'm connecting with the world, I have a better idea of what it is that I really love and really care about. And
Absolutely.
um, I went to the library and checked out some books about geology yesterday because I just am interested. And it was strange. I had to give myself permission somehow to say, I can read about geology. That's okay. And who knows what'll come of it? I don't know if anything will ever come of that. But it was like a moment of quietness that made it possible for me to say, I think I will
I want
read
to go.
some about geology.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what
This
comes
is
of
one of
it.
my arguments too, is quiet opens up into so many other worlds. We don't know what we're missing
Yeah.
when we don't take the time to be quiet, because from quiet are these great portals into fantastical and imaginative and holy places.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it sounds like we're talking about a library, right? I mean, when
A
I go to the
magical library, the
library and
enchanted library.
I'm on my way to the geology books, actually yesterday, for some reason I ran across a book about cathars, if I'm pronouncing that right. I was like, I think I'll read about cathars too. I had no idea I wanted to read about cathars, but
But now I do.
as I wandered in the library, I think maybe this metaphor might have some relevance to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You talk about the what is it, the wise woman's cottage that's bigger on the inside than it is on the
Yep.
outside.
In George MacDonald's work. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, I love your chapter that has that for the title. That's where you speak
Thanks.
most specifically or most sustainedly, I guess, about creative work and imagination. And so maybe we'll transition
Okay.
to the idea of imagination. And I love the way you talk about little Sarah, understanding, that the work, as you were in the world of the natural world, especially, that you somehow understood that it meant more than it meant, and that it meant something generous and good.
Yeah.
And then you responded to that as a child.
Yeah.
In poems, or maybe in doing or maybe drawing pictures. I can't remember, but I know you wrote some poems.
Poems mostly, yeah.
Which were, hopefully you can write better poems now.
Let us hope.
But but I love that idea that, you suggest that children understand quiet a little better than most of us as adults do.
I think it's their native ground. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Yeah.
think if you look at so I'm surrounded by children, so I have the chance to study them all the time. Um, but it is, I do feel like living in the presence of young children, we think of it as so much work, but it is an invitation to a different way of fronting and encountering the world. Because
Hmm.
I mean, the first thing is they receive the world as absolute wonder.
Hmm.
It's a tree,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything is astonishing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we do. I think there, of course, there's the, growing up into the understanding the fallenness of the world, but I think we we still have that capacity. I think that's part of what it means to become a child in the kingdom, is
Hmm.
to come into the world and be astonished by it. And I think that as a child was what I recognized. And I think in my better artistic moments, in my better moments of prayer, is the same place of
Hmm.
realization that I had as a child.
Yeah.
Is something speaks in every atom of creation. And sometimes I glimpse this pattern and this form behind the movements of the ordinary. And I
Yeah.
glimpse a face that loves me or a kindness. And I think if we can cultivate that sensitivity in our hearts, both by the quiet, and I think very much by, I read a lot of books to my children that I think cultivate that kind of attention of
Hmm.
authors who stood in that place. I want them
Yeah.
to stand and look through the eyes of others so that they can recognize and treasure those impulses in themselves. But I
Mm.
think often those impulses and sights come from that place of childlike attention. It doesn't even mean you're totally alone. It just means your interior vision is fixed. You're watching, you're wondering, you're receiving.
Yeah. And it's funny to us when children are astonished by a tree, and we're, mature enough not to be astonished by the trees, but it's the kids who are right about it.
Exactly, absolutely. It was so I'm about to write an article about this, but I was in a so here in England we do charity shops, which are basically thrift stores. But charity
Mhm.
shops are treasure hunts, and we do it on our days off because it's great fun, and my children adore it because you can go to shops and you never know what you might find. So my children went. We were in a charity shop last week, and they just were utterly lost in the fairyland of used toys. It was in their own world, and the two lovely old English ladies, would just watch them clicking, and those things, they're just in their own world. It's
Mm.
beautiful. And but then one of them, she said, "Oh, I'd need gin to get there again. I need a good gin to get that place again."
Mm.
And I thought, isn't that it was funny at the time, but the way she said it. But I think we think it's something lost. It's something that's only available to children. But I would argue that it's not at all lost to us. And this is a lot of what's at the back of quiet for me is this cultivation of the very impulses that were native to us as
Yeah.
children that lead us into wonder. We can cultivate those, we can choose them, and we can nurture them in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. How did we ever get used to the idea that there are creatures that can flap their wings and fly up into the air? Right?
Yeah,
We take that for granted. How do you take that for granted? That's the most astonishing thing
exactly.
in the
And
world.
it's either C.S. Lewis or Tolkien that says basically you read myth in order to come back and realize, you read stories about dragons in order to come back and realize how astonishing horses are.
Yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of side.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, I I want to read a little bit back to you and get you uh, to comment on it, because I love the way you put this. When you're talking about little Sarah, I suspect you could also be talking about big Sarah or any of us who are trying to do creative work. You speak of that almost frustrated yearning to give language to the way the world was a story telling itself to me.
Yeah.
A little farther down, you speak of a sense of amazement and desire that grew too heavy and sweet to keep inside my small body.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that description of what it's like to be a child
Yeah.
trying to do some kind of creative work.
Yeah.
You know, I my my grandfather had a sausage plant, so we had big rolls of paper,
Amazing.
for wrapping meat in,
Yeah.
and my aunt would rip off huge pieces of paper for me. They were tall, longer than I was tall. Then I would, draw pictures of all the little dogs that would hang out outside the sausage plant looking for food. So I remember that idea of just wanting to make a record of, you know, in this case, it was little ratty dogs, little stray dogs who
Yeah.
who wanted sausage scraps.
Yeah.
But when I put it that way, I am belittling the marvel that those little dogs were to me as a little
Yes.
boy.
Absolutely. I think I have lots of things like that. I remember, you say geology, I was fascinated by stones. And I
Yeah.
thought they were kind of this, I would collect these stones and they were just like gems from a different world. It felt like, they were these little tokens from some magical kingdom. Um,
Yeah.
no, but I think, yeah, I think that's very much cultivating that side is at back of creative endeavor. It is
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
coming back into
Well,
this space. Yeah.
and that language you used of this being just too big for my small body, that creativity and imagination is almost where that spills out of our inability to take it all in. And by the way, your body's bigger than it was when it was 8, but it's still not big enough to contain all these
Not
wonders.
none of ours are. None of ours will ever
Yeah.
be. We can't. It's all eternity we're trying to express because that's what we glimpse. Because I think
Yeah.
we come into these moments where we glimpse the cosmos, we glimpse heaven, we glimpse kingdoms, and it comes out in a single line of poetry, one song. It's never as much as we want to say or as perfect as we want to say it, but we witnessed something, and I think art is often our faithfulness to say what we've seen, and
Mm-hmm.
I think quietness helps us to be true and faithful witnesses because it helps us to attend.
Mm.
And in that sense, to be truly a witness, to say, this is what I've seen. And here's, yeah, this is what
Yeah.
I've seen. And at the heart of that is a seeing, is an attention.
Yeah.
I think that's
That's
often
that's really helpful language to say that, to speak of the faithfulness to say what we've seen,
yeah,
rather than the pressure to make something up, to say
exactly.
something nobody's ever said before, or
Yes,
to come up with some brilliant idea that's smarter than the other 10 people who said whatever
yes,
they said on the internet today about whatever. Um, and again, that the quiet cultivating attention gives us more to see, therefore more to
yeah.
say.
And I think it keeps us in a humble place too, of saying, I'm not going to necessarily wake up and have something to say. Whereas I think sometimes that online world makes us think we should always have something important to say. And actually,
Mhm.
quite a lot of the time, I haven't had enough time to think about something important to say. I just need to
Yeah,
live and look and
yeah,
love and
yeah,
serve. And then eventually something will bubble up. It always does.
yeah,
I would rather write that and be faithful to that because it comes from having loved and worked and watched and seen God at work in the different corners of my life. And then I have something to say, but it's a slower process
yeah,
than, you know,
yeah. You have a newsletter, right?
I do.
And
It's
how
called
often
From
does
the
that come
Vicarage.
out? It's called what? I'm sorry, said.
It's called From the Vicarage.
Aha, yes.
Yes,
How
indeed.
often do you send that out?
As often as I manage, which is very irregularly, but I try to
Okay,
get like around a couple a month at least.
I see. Okay,
More
so
often.
you're not saying it's Monday. I've got to have something to say because it's Monday because my reader's expecting something on Tuesday.
And I'm not, I mean, some people will do that, and that is beautiful and great. And there can be discipline in producing things as well. And I think
Sure.
that is a gift. But, especially for me in this time of life where I am mostly giving out, I don't have a lot of time to read and write and take in. So I'm not going to
Yeah.
have things to say as regularly. I hope I will have more things to say eventually when I have more time, to
Yeah.
go to those deep places. But at this point, it's a slower process. It's a slower burn, but it comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep showing
Yeah.
up.
Can we talk about boredom?
Sure.
You said that boredom was one of the great gifts of your formation as a
Yeah,
child. So you value boredom.
I
Um,
do. I think my children need a lot of it.
yeah.
Probably me too.
Well, I was wondering, do you ever get bored anymore?
But the thing is, I don't really get bored. There's always too many things to do. But this is
Mm-hmm.
what we discover in boredom, because I think boredom is not natural. Like boredom is it usually means we're restless for something, I think. Usually
Mm-hmm.
means we're searching for something. But
Yeah.
if we don't have the space to ask ourselves what it is, we need the space of boredom to figure out what it is at the bottom of me feeling this way.
Yeah.
So I think often when you tell a child, I'm bored, I have nothing to do, you say, oh, okay, we'll go sit in the garden and see what happens. And
Yeah.
then they figure out there are
Yeah.
many things that they could do. There are many things that were probably in their minds. There's many things they were feeling, but they were
Yeah.
not going to know it until you sent them out to be by themselves. I think
Mm-hmm.
adults are very much the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the difference being that adults have a screen they can look at
Very
to
much so. A screen,
neutralize
and
that boredom.
and the real difficulty of life, I would say in a fallen world. I think we'll probably have good work to do in heaven, but I think in a fallen world, work becomes a need, a necessity. Those are difficult things as adults. I need to provide this. I need to clean this. I need to. But I
Mm-hmm.
think we can, even amidst those responsibilities, even amidst, I think those are things we have to contend with naturally. And then there's the level of the screens that I think then invade us at a whole different level. Because I think, yes, is it always hard to have quiet? Definitely. But it's a different thing when every time I sit down or every time I relax, a screen is my default. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's a very different use of solitude and relaxation. And I think it produces very different things to if
Yeah.
we listen, if we pray, if we read, if we converse,
Yeah.
wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. We've been talking, or we've both been talking some about the idea of the screen as something that is sort of filling our brains, uh,
Yeah.
you also talk about a little bit about the phone as a camera, and this, it is an odd thing I mean, to see somebody taking video of fireworks, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but the best video I've ever seen of fireworks
Doesn't
wasn't
come
nearly
any
as
more close.
interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
um, and so yeah, you draw a distinction between receiving and recording.
Yeah. Well, I think increasingly we need to recognize that when we step back from an experience in order to record it and package it for everybody else's consumption, we're actually removing ourselves from what that experience might confer or communicate to us. So, I'm so grateful as a child that I didn't have a phone. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
if I had been out listening to the whisper of the trees and seeing the stars, and suddenly I decided I need to take a phone and post about it. What
Mm-hmm.
I understood from that would be such a different thing. It would be much more about performance and presentation than it would
Yeah.
be about receiving the beauty around me.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, phones really have the danger of turning us into consumers that at the same time, consumers of every kind of beauty, that at the same time, we miss out on the central gifts that the beauty actually confers to us.
Yeah. Yeah. You remove yourself from the
Yeah.
beauty in order to record it, and in so doing, you don't
We lose
even.
the very thing the beauty was about to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
but I also have to say, I'm not terrible about it. It's not taking too many pictures and videos is not a besetting sin for me. I probably don't take enough. I always assume somebody's going to take pictures, and I
Yeah.
went through the family went to Italy last year, and people were showing pictures they had taken, and they were really fun to look at. And then I looked at mine, and it was a parking place. It was always had like 6 pictures of parking places and a couple of
Yes.
ticket stubs and things like
Yeah.
that. But anyway, sorry, I got off track. When you talk about backing out in order to record, I am guilty of doing that, not so much with my phone camera, but just in general. I mean, knowing that I'm a writer, so therefore I have to be ready to repurpose this experience.
Yes.
I've got to, even in the midst of something, I have a tendency to step out and think, okay, how would I frame this into a story? And I've been doing it for a very long time. I mean, when I was a child, I
Yeah.
knew we're going to be telling stories at the dinner table, and this happened. How am I going to start this story? What's the punchline going to be? And it's a skill, it's an important skill, but I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. I mean, my initial reaction would be, I do think that's a very different kind of skill than it is a skill that is very different from allowing a machine
Yeah.
to be the eye that's between you and the
Yeah.
experience.
Okay. That's fair enough.
So, it is also something that's going on inside of your mind and imagination. So it is
Mm-hmm.
it is a very different thing than the use of a piece of technology that's outside of you. So that'd be my
Yeah.
first thing. But I do think, I think we just live in a world and a culture that is so conditioned by reason, by description, by
Mhm.
kind of that scientific observational stand us apart knowledge, that we
Yeah.
do have to, the medievals, maybe their default was more the embodied mystic knowledge. That is not our default.
Hmm.
We need a lot more. They might need more science. We need a lot more
Yeah.
mystical imaginative
Yeah.
knowledge. So I think there can be a real grace and joy in cultivating and choosing times where I'm going to turn this off and I'm just going to immerse myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what quiet brings us to as well is, there is a time for everything. And part
Hmm.
of what I think coming to quiet is learning, when are my times for quiet? I don't have to be quiet all the time. I
Hmm.
actually don't think quiet calls us to live solid lives of solitude or deep prayer. I just think it calls us to be rooted in something beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think you choose, when shall I have my mind on? When shall I have it off? When will I use my phone? When shall I not? And I think a lot
Hmm.
of it comes down to that, so that we are still cultivating then these regular spaces where all we're doing is receiving and attending rather than, observing and packaging.
Yeah. 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 That's good. All right. We're running out of time. So I want to ask you the question I typically end with in these conversations, and that is, who are the writers that make you want to write, Sarah?
That is actually, usually things like that are hard. That's an
Huh?
easy one this year.
Good.
I have read 2 writers this year that just put sparkles in my eyes and itchings in my fingers.
Oh,
Um,
good. I can't wait.
Annie Dillard was one of the first
Uh-huh.
ones.
Okay.
I missed Pilgrim at Tinker Creek years ago, and I read it
Yeah.
all the way through for the first time. And just her writing is superb. It
Yeah.
just makes me want to be better at my craft. I
Mm.
love reading her writing. And the other one is Robert McFarlane. I don't know if he's as big in the States. He's bigger. He's pretty big over here, but he's kind of this mixture of scientist, poets, natural history,
Uh-huh.
literary theorist, who writes a lot about landscape and the outdoors. I read his book called Landmarks, which is basically on the interaction between landscape and language, and
Okay.
how the way that we
Wow.
speak about language forms our experience of the landscape around us, and how a limited vocabulary, which we are increasingly seeing in this day and age,
Hmm.
limits our, a lack. What does he said? A language deficit leads to attention deficit. We can't see what we cannot describe. And
Wow.
I came across this book, The Old Ways, years ago, and just loved it. He walked all these ancient walking paths in England, but then he did about 10 years ago, he did a book called The Lost Words, because there was a study done.
Oh, yeah.
You know this, yeah. So
Yeah,
he
I know that
looking
book.
at the language of like a dictionary.
I'm
Maybe
sorry, I interrupted you. Start over. You started to say what the book was, and I interrupted you. So,
no worries. I think it was about 10 years ago. I think it was Oxford University Press put out a junior dictionary, and they had words in it like blog and computer, but then they cut a whole list of words, and it was words like otter and kingfisher and ivy and blackbird. And he was like, wait, what does this mean? Are we going to really let children lose this vocabulary? And so he created this book called The Lost Words, that is song spells, so to speak, that just kind of put back into, through poetry, the use of these words accompanied by just gorgeous illustrations. And a free copy was given to every, I think, primary school in England.
no, really.
Yeah, but he's basically, he was writing about it in Landmarks, I think, before that, because that was when he was describing about going through these different landscapes and saying that culturally we're just losing place names. We're losing. So he creates glossaries throughout the book for the hundreds of different ways you can describe a mountain, a creek, a meadow. He goes, from place to place throughout England, collecting these very local historical place names and saying, what do we lose when we can no longer describe the landscape around us with intimate knowledge? We lose our value for it, our desire to protect it, our understanding of what it gives us, our knowledge of how to cultivate it. So anyway, both on a philosophical level and also his prose is just beautiful.
All right. Landmark sounds like something I really want to read. So thanks. I didn't know about that book. So thank you.
It's excellent. You'll enjoy it.
Good. All right. Well, Sarah Clarkson, thanks so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to talk. I hope we can talk again soon.
It's a pleasure. I've so enjoyed it.
This podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. And all our podcasts are made possible by the generous support of our members. To learn more about us, visit rabbitroom.com. And to become a member, rabbitroom.com/donate.